Hello and welcome to the Southbound Sports Show. I'm your host, Richie Leahy, here with my co-host, Matty B. And before we get right into the NFL stuff, Matt, I have a follow-up from last week. We talked about Claysburg and their vote on turf versus grass. How did that go?
Oh, as the leader of a multi-million-dollar organization, of course the vote passed for turf.
So you're saying you had a hand in that?
I did have a hand in that as the head of the organization.
Did you have a vote?
No, I didn't have a vote.
So you just made the proposal and then they voted on it right there?
No, to be honest, it was a project that the school district was looking to make improvements because part of it was our bleachers were extremely outdated. Where a lot of the work was done in the 50s and 70s, and it was overdue to be upgraded. And the discussion was just between the major discussion was between grass and turf. And when the numbers were finally crunched, there really surprisingly wasn't much of a difference between the two. And for as much additional playing time that can be used then between the lower levels of our football program and into baseball and soccer potential, it was a no-brainer. So I was extremely excited that the measure passed.
Yeah, looking into it last week, I'm surprised that more schools don't go to it just for the maintenance costs of just the longevity and having that not have to worry about basically mowing the lawn, taking care of it, putting fertilizer down, sodding pieces that get tore up. So I think you'll see a lot more high schools go that route.
And I look at, even after our show ended last week, I was kind of reflecting on what the high school coaches that I worked for in North Carolina, the amount of time that they spent, because a lot of the coaches themselves handled the maintenance that on the field. It wasn't the custodial staff. It was actually the head coach that ended up doing a lot of the work on the game fields. So they managed it because they wanted to keep it in good shape. So they had a routine of watering the grass and cutting the grass, it's not so much an issue at my school because we co-op, we partner with another high school because of our size. But we play soccer. We have a soccer program with someone else. But I know with the programs that I coached in North Carolina, you had boys and girls soccer that also played in fall and the spring. That was at least 4 extra teams playing on that field. So you have that additional wear and tear that if you have the turf and the lines are marked for it, it's really a no-brainer to be able to have that done.
Yeah, that's cool because I think even the Steelers, you can see some of the wear and tear on their field whenever they held the state playoffs there in the fall. And so that's just another thing that at high school you have the same type of thing where everyone's using the same field. And it's not just used. I mean, they're professionals in Pittsburgh that are taking care of that, and they still have issues. So, all right, good to hear. Let's move into the NFL stuff. Bud Dupree, the Steelers are going to release him. And I wonder if they had planned to use the salary, or not the salary cap, the franchise tag on him. But because the NFL has not announced a salary cap for the year, I think that really messed with their plans. And I mean, I'm confident in saying I don't think the Steelers will win the Super Bowl this year. Like Ben coming back at the salary that he's going to get, like $25 million or whatever, like that they tried to narrow it down. But even whenever they reworked his deal, they were still almost $1 million over the cap. And so now you're looking at it, and that's just the proposed cap. So for those that aren't following it closely, the NFL redoes the salary cap. I don't know if it's I think it's yearly, right?
Yes.
So they base it off of how much revenue they're coming in. Some of them are very consistent, like the television network deals. Like they're decided ahead of time. One component is ticket sales for the games. Now, because of the coronavirus, fans weren't allowed in. So there's been some rumors that it's going to drop $22 million this year, or you'll see a decrease of 11.2%. That's the estimate from NFL.com. So that's a big drop. Like that's basically Ben Roethlisberger's salary. And then you're talking about, I mean, we talked about potentially letting Bud Dupree go and maybe trying to bring in J.J. Watt. With that big of a drop, that was never going to happen. And even if they did, then now they're going to have to make cuts elsewhere. So last week we talked about Juju and Connor possibly being gone. They're not franchise tagging Bud Dupree because that's going to put them up too much. So they're going to be bargain shopping for a couple big time positions, wide receiver, which I think the depth there is probably good enough for this year. But running back, the guys on the roster, I don't know if they've shown enough to be a number one. And now you're going to single out TJ Watt on one side. If he's going to attract enough attention, maybe the guy that they bring in, a defensive end, maybe they draft one. Next man up. We don't know. We'll see what happens in free agency. Maybe they make a move, but you're going to have to see that type of trade-off this year. And it's not just affecting the Steelers, but because of some of the veteran contracts, like Joe Hayden is like 10%. Actually, I think I might have it up. He's 8% of their entire cap, Joe Hayden. Roethlisberger is 13.5%, basically. So you have two guys that are taking up a quarter of your salary cap. You don't have a lot of room to really maneuver. I mean, what do you think they can do going into this year?
I think they could possibly go after getting a center and address some of their offensive line needs. Wide receivers tends to be a position that Pittsburgh has drafted really well with. So I think they probably could end up in the later rounds getting a guy. I mean, I know that's really a gamble, but they've proven over the last several years and decades to be able to draft wide receivers really well. So I would trust their evaluation team for finding a receiver. I mean, to me, the biggest hole is replacing Pouncey at center and getting an established running back to take some of the pressure off of Ben.
I don't think they have enough room though to make those moves. Like, I think that they're going to be stuck unless the NFL, because I think if the NFL takes a look at this and they say like, all right, our initial estimate, we're really making it tough for these teams. Even if they give them like an extra $5 million a team, then what? I mean, there's really not much you can do with that type of stuff. So you're going to be relying on the draft, and that's where I think you're looking at it, and it starts to make a lot of sense. Where if you just try to get a guy for cheap like Le'Veon Bell, do you do it?
I think it depends. I don't know specifically Le'Veon Bell. I know. Well, I said it last week. I would be shocked if they re-signed him, knowing all of the issues that went into him last time.
That's even if he can get under like a suit, like a small salary. So last year with the Chiefs, he was at 700,000 as his base salary. That was their cap hit too. So like that's a big drop from his Jets deal, and so his Jets deal for last year was 8.5 million. I don't know if like the Steelers can take the same type of deal that the Chiefs did, but at this point, I would almost be 100% for it. Like I don't care about the pass type stuff. You're gonna put your team around Ben Roethlisberger and say like, look, we're going all in on you. What do you need to be successful? Ben needs to be able to take a guy like Le'Veon Bell and say, look, you're coming here, you're going to work hard. Your reputation's ruined. Like you went for the money and it backfired, and now no one's even signing you. Almost like Tom Brady did with Antonio Brown. Like that's what a champion does. He's able to get guys, turn them around and get them focused on football. And if Ben's looking at it, I don't think there's obviously going to be a drop off with him too. Like he hasn't performed, but in terms of just getting a veteran running back that you're familiar with, that knows you, and you've basically put him in the best position to succeed. A lot of people probably don't want to hear me say this, but like that seems to be one of their only options if you're going to try to keep your offense dynamic. Like you're saying, rebuild around the line. Center's an expensive position. I mean, it's highly competitive. So where do you go? Like, do you draft, you try to bring someone in, and then there goes the rest of your cap. So I would say go cheap. I mean, Antonio Brown was a similar deal. Basically, $750,000, I think, last year for the Bucs. Not a lot of money in terms of, okay, we need to get under the cap. If we only have $5 million to play with and a bunch of rookie salaries, why not bring him in? Like you're throwing the same type of money at Dwayne Haskins. Bring in Le'Veon Bell back. See what happens. I mean, the Jets, they paid a bunch. They released them. I'm not sure what is going to happen. Like the Chiefs last year, they announced they were paying up to $690,000. You're not going to get a running back with his upside for that cheap. You're just not.
How much? And maybe I should have looked more into this, but what was even his production with the Chiefs? I feel like he was buried in that depth chart.
Oh, they signed him when they're only signing him for that much money. They were going to rely on him in just the backhand, like only if something else happened, because they had already had one of the running backs opt out for coronavirus, so he was out for the year. One of the Williamses, I think, and so there goes their veteran depth. So they're bringing Le'Veon Bell in, and they're saying, like, look, you're just here in case we need you. And guess what? They didn't need him. He had 82 attempts in the regular season. He still averaged 4 yards a carry, which is about what the Steelers were getting anyway. In the postseason, he only had 2 attempts. And he had 0 receptions in the postseason, but in the regular season, he also had 16 receptions and averaged 8.6 yards attempt passing, which I think is one of his strengths. And where if you're losing a guy like Juju, it makes sense to just bring Le'Veon Bell back. Like, I honestly don't see a downside. Like, what's the downside? He blows up the locker room and they don't win the Super Bowl? That's already 99% what's going to happen. Like, there's only a very slim chance that the Steelers get hot enough to win the Super Bowl after trying to make these cuts to get under the salary cap.
But, I think as a veteran, he's going to command more of a salary that you're saying about the potential. I would rather take a flyer on a first-year guy or a undrafted free agent or somebody that's going to be a lot cheaper. That if you're going to gamble on youth.
Well, they're going to gamble on youth because they're going to drop the running back once again in the later rounds, and it might work out, it might not. But like for under $1 million, Matt, like that's not a big hit. Like you're going to sign some other running back. Like what was James Conner going to get? Let's say, because he hasn't had any bids yet. They're just saying that he's unlikely to remain. But in terms of just running back, he was making around the same thing. I don't know what his free agent's going to look like. They're looking for possibly, last year the Steelers signed him for a 4-year, $3 million contract. I think you can get Bell for something similar now. Like try to hit him under. Connor's going to try to get something higher. But like if I was down between the two and you're looking at this year, give me Bell. Like the running game has been awful, Matt. Let's go back and see what happens. I know a lot of running backs don't last that long, but just in terms of wear and tear, he hasn't been seeing a lot of wear and tear. He hasn't been playing.
and there's a reason for it.
And that's why they need a leader to come in and say, like, look, we're going to try to win the Super Bowl here. And if you're serious,
where's he at?
Sign. He played for the money. He went to the Jets. Like, that's a lose-lose. Then he signed to the Chiefs, almost got a Super Bowl ring. But I think that would have to make him hungry, seeing a team that was so close. And then if they're not going to sign him back, like, what other options? No team's going to throw a ton of money at him.
But you hit the nail on the head. They're not going to sign him to a bigger deal. What's attractive for someone like Le'Veon Bell to come back to Pittsburgh, knowing you're not even going to get what you're trying to get paid?
He might have that spark. Look at Gronkowski with Tom Brady. He comes back. The dude has multiple touchdowns in the Super Bowl. Like, no one was going to say, like, oh, Gronkowski, he's looked awful. That's what a lot of people are saying throughout the year. Like, should have stayed retired. Ha, ha, ha. And then guess what? Once they got back on the same page, I mean, it takes a while if you haven't been playing. Bell's at least been practicing. Like, you haven't heard about him skipping practice or anything. So the dude wants to play. It just hasn't worked out. Like, he took his gamble, signed with the bad team. We both talked about it. Like, signing with the Jets was a bad idea. There are so many other teams that were out there doing spread type stuff that he could have tried to sign a lesser deal with. But he took the money, and now he's not even going to get the money. So he should have took the franchise tag with Pittsburgh. I mean, they obviously wanted him. They signed that deal. He was going to hold out or whatever. If they used it again instead of giving him a long-term deal, at this point, what are your other options? The worst case scenario is you're bringing him in under $1 million. The cap hit's not that bad, and if it doesn't work out, you just cut him again. Like, I just don't see any negatives because you can still draft the guy. They're not going to draft the running back high anyway. They're most likely going to draft a center or someone on the offensive line because that's where they need the help. Maybe they draft a defensive end to try to keep that going. I think the linebacker core, if they come back healthy, they're good. The defensive backs, they could go that way, but they've been going that way for a few years. And I think they need to focus on getting Fitzpatrick a long-term deal. Maybe they're waiting to see whenever Ben retires. I would want to sign Fitzpatrick to a long-term deal.
Yes.
Why let him go? But they need other guys to come in. You can try to convince guys to take pay cuts, but I think the answer is right there. Just go with Bell. Like, why not? At least, if anything, when they reopen the stadium, there will be fans that want to see him run the ball. And that's my final thought on it. You can add anything to it you want.
I'm intrigued that you have this much love for Le'Veon Bell.
Oh, I don't have love for him. I'm just saying, in terms of the Steelers, if I want them to win and I want to be excited for the offense, there's no other player, not even if they're going to draft, because they're not drafting like one of the top running backs in the draft. We don't even really know who the top running back is going to be coming out. Like, do you? It was a weird year.
There's 3 that I have in mind.
You take Najee Harris?
Yes.
But he ran behind Alabama's offensive line.
Okay. And
some of them worked out in the NFL. Some Alabama's guys don't work out. It's very hit or miss.
I mean, I saw enough that I think if he's there, they're idiots for not taking him. I look at him.
So wait for the draft. See if they can get him. See if they can get a guy high like that in the first round. And if not, take a guy later in the rounds and sign Bell. Like, they don't have to do it right now. I don't think anyone's chomping at the bit right now to get Le'Veon Bell. Like, I think other teams look at it and they're like, all right, that guy's done. But let's see, James Conner, maybe we'll sign him. And then the Steelers are right there. So, I mean, worst case scenario, there's nothing against them bringing back James Conner either. He doesn't get any interest. Maybe they use that as a thing. He wants a higher salary. They're like, look, we're going to sign Le'Veon Bell. And then I bet he would take a lower cut.
Because there's even that running back from North Carolina that I think has that physical downhill presence that would be helpful for Pittsburgh. And the other one was, I believe, Clemson's ETN's going out. So there's the three that take your pick.
I don't know. I still think with the offensive line having issues and Ben not like feeding the running backs, because like when anything goes bad, they don't need that big bruising running back because they panic and go right into pass mode. They need a guy like Bell that can get the ball, like with the Chiefs, 8 yards of reception, like just as an outlet. A guy that can get you a first down. Like getting a big bruising running back, nice. Maybe Harris is the only guy out of that group that I would be comfortable with catching the ball out of the backfield. But again, he hasn't shown he doesn't have the I mean I guess just the presence. Maybe he would show it, but like you can't come into your first year in the NFL and have that out of the backfield. And Roethlisberger and Bell already had that rapport. Get it back. You saw it with Tom Brady and Gronkowski this year. Bring it in, see what happens. I mean, they could redo that whole room. Draft Harris and sign Bell. Have him learn from him and then go from there. Like, there's no redemption story for Bell. If he would have to go somewhere and just play lights out, but I don't even know if anyone's going to give him that chance. Let's see what else. Godwin, he got the tag from the Bucs, or he's about to get it.
He got it, and their linebacker Levante David got an extension.
Well, some other teams like who's the tight end for the Chargers. He got cut, or he didn't get the franchise tag. Is it Hunter Henry?
Yeah.
So, because I didn't want to misspeak. Yeah, I want to make sure. He's about to become a free agent too, and I think that's another one. You're looking at the salary cap stuff, and some of these teams, they're just saying like, look, we're going to let a lot of guys go, and we can franchise tag a lesser position with lower money, or our team's even going to use the tag this year because of the salary cap. So you're going to see a lot of bigger name free agents this year, and the salary cap is why. I haven't seen a definitive list, but those were the two that really stood out to me. There were a couple other ones that I think were let go. But any other moves that stood out to you so far?
I thought Minnesota releasing Kyle Rudolph was intriguing because I was wondering what the price tag was going to be for him. Because with Pittsburgh losing McDonald, I thought that would be potentially a good fit for the offense.
I don't know if they can make that work though.
Yeah, I don't know.
Because he was making $7 million. So like you're telling me they can't afford Le'Veon Bell for $700,000. You're gonna sign Kyle Rudolph for like, even let's say they drop it to $5 million. Like I just don't think it's gonna work out. I don't know if the Vikings can really need him though. But it's another thing where it depends on what their offense is trying to do. I don't know which route they're going. Speaking of skill guys, though, the Bears tagged Allen Robinson, which reminded me because I thought that was a strange one. Because like even Godwin, he was getting the tag just because they didn't want to let him go because Tom Brady's coming back, and Tom Brady definitely was targeting him through the playoffs. But with like Allen Robinson, like the Bears, it's almost like you don't know what your quarterback situation is going to be. And sometimes I wonder if it's just better just to bring in another a rookie wide receiver and try to make something work, or just sign another veteran. Like he didn't stand out to me enough that I would think that you would say like that's the guy we have to bring back. Let's see. Lions didn't tag Kenny Golladay. That's another one where it's like, okay, big time wide receiver. What are we doing with him? All right, just head to a free agency. Like we're bringing in a new quarterback. We don't know what's going to work. We don't know if you have any rapport with any of the other guys on the team. Like let's just let him go. Maybe he was a product of Stafford. Maybe he'll reunite with him. I don't know. But I think those were a lot of the other ones were just linemen. And then, of course, we talked about the Steelers ones already. The Ravens aren't tagging anyone they've mentioned. But again, like some of the franchise tag salaries are just, I think, too high. So a lot of teams are choosing not to tag the guys everyone thought they were going to. And so it wouldn't shock me one bit if they just end up tagging nobody. So keep an eye on that. The last one, Russell Wilson, that thing, not really tied to franchise tag. But what do you think of that situation?
In regards to what?
He's not mentioned in their season ticket situation. I don't know if you saw that. That's the latest news. But the Cowboys signed Dak Prescott, where everyone was pushing for Russell Wilson to go. But now it looks like he's definitely going to be on the out. Where do you think he ends up?
The speculation was the Raiders, which I think would be a very interesting fit.
But were they one of the teams that he named that he didn't want to go to because he wasn't going to be asking for a trade? Remember that?
I thought he was among that. They were among the teams that he was okay with.
I don't know. I think the Bears, as I mentioned them, I think they're one of the teams that are going to be pushing for him. And I don't think they were on that list. But I would wonder, like, they would have to be close if he's talking about a team that seems to be one quarterback away every year.
Yeah.
Like why not? I mean, some teams obviously are better than others. But if you're like having Mitch Trubisky lead you into the playoffs, which I always thought was a bad draft pick, and he just hasn't been consistent, like for that high of a draft pick, you need to take that next step, and he never took it. Like Russell Wilson would easily elevate them, and then you're really down to a Lions team that's going through a rebuild once again. They're not going to be competing with you. And then Aaron Rodgers, and then the Vikings again, which are they going to take that next step? Are they on the decline? I don't think that their quarterback situation is anything impressive. So would Russell Wilson be dueling it out with Aaron Rodgers for the supremacy in the North? I don't know. I think that would be the most intriguing to me if he was going to go somewhere. But at this point, like, yikes. Teams are sending out their letters. Now, a lot of teams are saying that they're going to have fans. I know I mentioned that last week because, like, one of the basketball teams said that they weren't going to. But it looks like all the football teams are going to look to have fans because they're probably looking at the salary cap issue and are wondering, like, what are we going to do? You're almost going to have to collective bargain that back in or out or something because I would think that has to be hurting the players too. Like how many guys were hoping for a big payday this year? Like bad timing. Sorry, guys. Like that would have to be awful because you're like, all right, I'm going to go ahead and make sure that my contract is up at this certain time. And then it blows up right before and is directly out of your control.
Oh, sorry, COVID.
Yeah, so here it is. The Cowboys, Saints, Raiders, and Bears. So the Bears were on that list. So the Raiders and Bears would be the two. Drew Brees might not be retired. Like we already had our show saying about how he was done. So if he comes back, what do you think for the Saints' outlook next year?
I think they're still. I mean, with or without Brees, I think they have a pretty solid group around them that I think they're plug and play.
Well, that's one of the ones where I almost wondered at first when the list came out, where if Brees was kind of hanging around, Russell Wilson could fit right in. And like Brees didn't get hit a lot. I know he got hurt, but that was just kind of like a freak injury type deal, like breaking your ribs or whatever. So why not? Like, why not go somewhere where it's a very quarterback-friendly offense? And then Drew Brees starts posting these workout videos like he's Terrell Owens. It's like, what are you doing? It's like, I don't. Why are you showing us all these workouts? Or that player that shouldn't be named. That remember he left the Steelers and then he went to the Patriots, told them all their secrets, and then he started posting all those workout videos, even though he's like 100 years old. So I wonder if he comes back, he has to look at it and say, like, look how close I was. And maybe the Saints don't even need him. Like he was injured and he stepped right into it in the playoffs, and they were in a battle. So it wasn't like they weren't close. So, like, why not just say, like, look, have another quarterback ready to go. I can get us into the playoffs. I just need to stay healthy. Like, just let me stay healthy, whatever I need to do, and I can play one more year. Because if he gets banged up again, they're done. We don't know how much of his poor throwing in the playoffs and down the stretch was due to his injury and rushing back for the playoffs. But I mean, like when he was out, they really didn't miss a beat. So I don't know. I thought he was done. I just don't know about that team. And I think that I wanted to really see Russell Wilson there to see, was it really Drew Brees? Or was it more of a system thing? Because some teams, it seems like you always hear about how certain colleges or certain teams have like the quarterback system. Like you always hear about like Texas Tech. They get a quarterback comes out and it's like, oh, that's just a system QB. And then Ohio State has all these quarterbacks drafted. Never have worked out, ever, Matt. In the history of football. No Ohio State quarterback has really gone into the NFL and even like had a playoff win or had like success. And then no one ever mentions them and says like, oh, that's a system quarterback thing. You could say the same for like Urban Meyer. No one's calling any of his quarterbacks system QBs, Matt. Like Tim Tebow, he got a playoff win, but who else? Alex Smith? 2 guys? And
About it.
Everyone else is busts. And I don't even know if people remember that Alex Smith played for him. Which I think he did.
Yeah, he did.
So, I don't know. I see guys, and then I'm wondering, like, some of these other ones I want to see, is it really just the coach? Or is it the QB? Because, like, Brady proved that it was him. A lot of it was him this year. Like, Belichick came in, and he was, like, the quarterback whisperer. Because remember, Brady would get hurt all those years, and then the backup was just as good as Tom Brady. So everyone had talked about how Bill Belichick was awesome. And then you look at his record without Tom Brady, under 500. So it's like, oh, maybe we were wrong all those years. What's Sean Payton do without Drew Brees? I'd be curious to see. Russell Wilson's a good quarterback to give to him to prove that. I mean, Belichick got Cam Newton, which is he was on the decline, let's be honest. So if they would have got Cam Newton 5 years ago, maybe we'd see something different. But I want to see Russell Wilson go to a team where he can show his offense because I think that would be good for the NFL. Get some guys moving around. I think that the NFL gets a little too safe. I think that's the negative with like the quarterbacks. When a team gets their guy, the NFL really seems to cling on. Like even the Chiefs signed Patrick Mahomes to like what, a decade deal. It's like we're not yeah. letting you leave. Anyone else? Who cares? We'll get rid of them. Maybe there'll be like a transcendent linebacker guy like Urlacher or Ray Lewis that we'll keep around just because people know who they are. And they'll be franchise guys. But most of the time, it seems like it's just the quarterback now.
Well, and I think it's interesting that when you look at the quarterbacks like Roethlisberger and Brady, who restructure their contract year in and year out and appear to take less money, they still win compared to the teams that they try to strong arm the franchise into making them pay these higher level contracts, and they're not making the playoffs.
Well, that's where I mean, like some of the teams, if I was a fan of like the Lions or whatever, I would almost say like, look, some of those quarterbacks that have been there forever, they won the Super Bowl really early in their careers. Like the Steelers, I had no problem with them keeping signing Roethlisberger. Like just keep signing him. He won 2 Super Bowls. Not many other franchises could say that. Like Eli Manning, perfect situation with the Giants, wins 2 Super Bowls. He wants to retire with them or whatever. But I still wouldn't have been bad for him to like go to another team and see what happens. Like I know he was that bad at the end where no one wanted him, so it might be a little bit different. But like same with Tom Brady, won it early when he was young. Russell Wilson won the Super Bowl early when he was young. Patrick Mahomes won the Super Bowl early when he was young. Like the Lions re-signing Matt Stafford, however many times that they did, guess what? He didn't win anything. Ever. So it's like, all right, let's just cut you loose and see what happens. Like the Falcons, Matt Ryan got close. How long did that take? And now it's like, all right, well, what are we doing? Like, that's the ceiling right now. The 49ers bring in Garoppolo. They're ready to move him the next year to bring in Tom Brady. Like, they were like, all right, we need a replacement for Garoppolo. It's like the guy just took you to the Super Bowl. Like, I think you kind of have to have that mindset where, all right, you got us there, but you didn't win it. So, like, why would we care? And I think, like, some of the teams that seem to hang on to the guys, like Aaron Rodgers, the Packers had him ready to go. They groomed him under Brett Favre, wins the Super Bowl, and now it's kind of like, oh, we got to keep hanging on to you. And it's like, why? Like, is any team really threatened by Aaron Rodgers in the playoffs? For whatever reason, the commentators, like, if you watch NFL commentators, they love him. But it's not like any other one else is like, oh, yeah, that guy, all he does is win. It's like, nah, just another flame out in the playoffs. Cowboys have a Tony Romo. They get Dak Prescott. He comes up. I know with the injury, he hasn't taken that next step. But if the Cowboys would have been like, nah, like I almost feel like they re-signed him because of the injury and they saw how bad they were without him. But that to me, that seems like a bad marriage. Like, all right, you haven't really won anything with us, but we got to re-sign you because it was way worse without you. So let's just make this work. I was like, yeah, I was homeless there for a bit. We better get remarried. You know what I mean? Like, that was scary. Did you see Andy Dalton out there throwing those picks? Like, what could happen if something happened to us? And then, like, 5 years later, Cowboys won't win a Super Bowl. And they'll still be the laughing stock of, remember that team that used to be good? Yeah, nice. Because of some guys like Tannehill, give him a change of scenery and prove that he's good. With the Dolphins, you were never too sure. If he doesn't make that move for his career or whatever, people might still think that he's garbage. He might be out of the league, man.
Yeah, that's a fair assessment.
So I want to see some of the quarterbacks start to move around more. Like, I know some of the NFL, or not the NFL, the NBA stuff with like LeBron chasing rings and moving to all these super teams. Like, cool, might hurt ratings a bit, but like some of the quarterbacks, you don't deserve to stay in your city. Like, you're not Mahomes. Like, if Baker Mayfield doesn't win a ring within the next 3 years, I would like to see him go somewhere else before he gets the veteran curse where people are like, you're way too old, dude. You're done. We can draft someone that might have better upside. Like, I think a lot of teams know where these quarterbacks, they're missing the call. They're buying into the franchise, or they think that they owe the franchise something when they really could just be jumping ship to a contender like Peyton Manning did. Peyton Manning did it at the best time. He was on the decline. He needed a defense to carry him. He changed teams because he knew he needed extra rings or people would laugh at him. He got his extra rings. Now, guess what, Matt? No one talks about him. Like, unless you're watching his commercials or seeing an ad for his show, like, no one talks about Peyton Manning anymore. It's nice.
Nope.
Because they're like, oh, Tom Brady's here, or will Aaron Rodgers ever win another one? Like, everyone thinks that he's going to, but it's almost like they bring him up just because they have no one else to talk about. Young quarterbacks, go get your money. Play for a team that would care about you. Like, some teams are close. Like Baker Mayfield, if he went to the 49ers, look at the weapons he has there in the structure. Maybe he could put them over the top. I don't know. But get some guys moving around. I want to see Joe Burrow do that. Like, if the Bengals are bad, go somewhere else.
Come sign in Pittsburgh.
Just show him video of, which one? Was it David Carr? Where he's got killed for like 5 years and then he was done?
Yes.
You don't think that he would have wanted to move teams, Matt? But he was the face of the franchise. Like, they were smart. They framed it like, you're the guy. Like, Deshaun Watson's at that place right now where he could go back to the Texans or he could go somewhere else. But guess what? Now you're changing teams. You have to win it with the new team. Like, you have to win within the next 3 years or you're done. Your career's over. Like, I don't know that many. There's not that many veteran guys, unless you're like a Trent Dilfer type, that have won the Super Bowl after moving like for the first time late in their career. Like there are no John Elways anymore. That's my last thing for the NFL. Do you have anything else on that?
No, I think that was fair assessment.
I did have one other thing that I wanted to bring up. I'm looking at the quarterback stage right now because I wanted to see. Because you had Russell Wilson. He won it. I'm not sure. Oh, this isn't by year. Oh, wait, here's by year. So you had Brady, which I think once you win it, if you win it a few more times, like not a big deal, like everyone knows. Patrick Mahomes, young when he won it. Going back, it's like there's a Nick Foles thrown in here, which he's 30-something now. So he was in his late 20s when he won it. Peyton Manning, of course, Tom Brady. You had the young Russell Wilson. Joe Flacco. I mean, Joe Flacco moved teams after they waited, but he waited too long. Like, I think he waited too long. The Ravens were already past him. And then coming in, it wasn't like his team. So he had to win that team. But then you just had other young guys like Aaron Rodgers. Drew Brees was kind of old when he won it the first time, the only time. Eli Manning, Peyton Manning, Roethlisberger, Brady. Going back to like Brad Johnson, Matt. Brad Johnson and Trent Dilfer. I guess Kurt Warner and John Elway would have been the ones that was around the turn of the century. That's it. Everyone else wins it when you're young. Now with the way the quarterback and stuff is, got to win it when you're young. But speaking of the Ravens, they have pushed this new overtime proposal. They are calling it, which, first off, it's not new. I've heard of this proposal for a long time. I want to say at least a decade ago. And I think I was trying to find an article that mentioned it. I think I found one from like 2004. But I saw like people were touting it as revolutionary. And it is called the spot and choose overtime, where it's a mix of college football, but instead of having like a set yard line, where college football you start at the 25 and then they take turns with the ball. The NFL wants them to, instead of having a coin toss to decide who gets the ball, you coin toss to see where the ball is spotted. So the first team could pick the 50-yard line. So you say, all right, we're going to put the ball at the 50-yard line to start overtime. And then the other team gets to pick if they want to be on offense or defense. Now that's where the other thing they're not really clear on what their proposal is going to be. Is it still sudden death? Like the first team to score wins? Or is it going to be like Bill Belichick was saying, something like a 7-minute overtime after that? Which to me, not revolutionary. Very, very stupid. Like, I think that's dumb. Like, who cares where the ball is? All you're doing is just adding an extra thing for no reason. I would rather them say, you know what? Let's do college football overtime, but we get to pick where the ball is. It's not at the 25 anymore. And because I think a lot of old people, like which are what these coaches are, they're so stuck in the past, Matt, they're going to pick like 25-yard line so that the other team will pick the defense, and then they have to march down the field anyway. Like, I guarantee you're not going to get a guy saying, you know what, 1-yard line. And then they get the ball on the 1-yard line. But see, that's what it's not clear. If that first team scores, is there going to be a kickoff then? Or do they also get the ball on the 1-yard line? Because, like, in college football, if you got the pick, like, let's say Michigan played Indiana in overtime, and it was a back-and-forth game. But, like, if I was Indiana, and I'm saying, like, Michigan's offense has been bad. And our offense is pretty damn good. We're going to spot the ball at your own 30-yard line so that you have to march the length of the field, knowing that Michigan's never going to drive the length of the field in overtime. So then Michigan has to come out and they pick either offense or defense. And then you just go from there. Both teams start at the 30-yard line. And then the next overtime, after the first overtime, you can move the ball. So then because Indiana picked first, they both get a shot at offense and defense, and then they pick the next spot. I don't think you have to have them go out to the 50-yard line. I just think the head coach can walk out and say, like, all right, we won it this time at the 20. Like Harbaugh could say, we trust our defense, we won it at the 5-yard line. We're going to man ball this in. and then your team's going to have to settle for a field goal. Like, I think that, to me, that would be more interesting because then it's fair. Each team has a chance. Just picking the spot doesn't really give your team the chance. Like, if the other team scores and the game's over because it's sudden death, all right. Like, would you want the Super Bowl to end that way?
No.
Like, seriously, because, like, what if they did something, like, crazy? Like, all right, we're going to put the ball on our own 1 yard line. And then the other team's like, all right, we're going to play defense. But they know, like, oh, we have Tom Brady. Like, we just wanted the ball. We don't care. Because Tom Brady's going to march us right down the field and he's going to win. So I wanted to bring that up. Well, hopefully the NFL is starting to talk about it. So hopefully we get some more information on what they're looking for next week because I wanted to bring it up. And so I know by putting it on the board next week, I'll look it up to see if there's been any further developments. But anything else you got for the NFL? I know we went super long on it this week.
I mean, with the overtime proposal, I just think they're why are they trying to make changes to it? I think with the revisions that they made, where each team has an opportunity to have a possession, I like it.
But see, I think that it's the start of getting out of the kickoff. Because I want to say this is their sly attempt to say, like, all right, what if instead of having a kickoff, we do the spot and choose because that was really fun, right, guys? That's how we start the game. And then
if they go that route, then just put it on the 50.
You know, man, they don't get the pick because that would be fun. Like, I think that would be even better. Who cares about overtime? If you go to see the game and they're going to get rid of the kickoffs and they don't want to do punts, I'd rather see punt or like go for it if you want to from the like your own 35 or whatever. Like, just go for it. Throw a 30-yard bump, make the defender knock it down. How many guys are going to knock it down or try to go for the interception because they want the stats? Then it's like a punt anyway. But like I'd rather see that. But I think this is like them getting the feet wet of letting fans know, like, okay, here's our thing. Touch the ball. Like, you pick the ball instead of the kickoff. And then everyone at home, it gives them something to watch. Maybe some people can gamble on it. Like, who do you think is going to get the ball first? Where are they going to spot the ball inside the 30? Like, are they just going to pick, 20-yard line? Then their team says, oh, well, we want defense then. Like, if they pick the 50, the team's obviously going to pick the offense, the other team. Because, I mean, I would. You're one completion away from field goal range. So, that's why we'll hit back more on this next week because I'm going to get into it. And that will give you some time to think about it from the coaching perspective. Because I think that they're looking to get rid of the kickoff. I mean, I guess it's not really a secret. They've been talking about it for a while. Let's get into college football, though, because I had some big things on here. The first thing, I talked about Ohio State because going into the national championship game, Matt, they were complaining that the coronavirus, they weren't at full strength. Guess what? They had to pause spring football again because of another outbreak. How? Like, at some point, Matt, doesn't it just become the coach isn't running a tight ship? Like, you hear of no other programs having coronavirus outbreaks in, spring practice when everyone's still pretty isolated. Yet you have to stop your spring practice. I'm sure that they got to get the excuses lined up for next year while they choked in the playoffs again. Like, all right, remember spring practice, we had to pause and then the coronavirus got us.
So for people that hurt us with our install.
People that think that it's going to go away, the coronavirus next year, guess what? It's not, because some teams, like, I have no idea what they're doing. Like, everyone knows how it spreads at this point because you have, like, NFL teams that went an entire postseason without having an outbreak. And I know those are professionals, but guess what? College basketball teams are doing it right now. And they travel a lot more. They have multiple games a week. Like, you have guys working out in your own facility. Like, why? What are you doing? Like, I just don't understand it. You would think that they have guys in the dorms. Most of these football teams have their own dorm for the football players. They're isolated. How are you still having outbreaks? And so I hope they get it taken care of. Because I don't want guys getting sick because you don't know. They could take it home, get a family member sick. Like, you don't know who's had access to the vaccine and stuff. So why put them at risk? Because at some point, it goes back to the adults that are in charge of the program and are supposed to be keeping these guys safe. These are kids coming in for workouts voluntarily. So I wanted to bring that up because I had people talking trash on me saying that I just don't like Ohio State, so whatever, I was calling them out. But it's like, look, I keep getting proven, like, my point is proven every couple months, every week with them, it seems like. Something's going on. And it's only them. Like, I haven't seen any other ones. Maybe I'm going to look it up right now just to be sure. Because maybe I'm wrong. Maybe there are some smaller schools. Oh, there is one, Matt. Some Duke. Duke had to pause their spring football 5 hours ago.
See, there you go.
So Duke and Ohio State, 2 peas in a pod, Matt. Which, Duke's another one where, what are you doing? How do you have so many top recruiting classes and your team is hot garbage in basketball? Like, what are you doing? Maybe it's a leadership thing too, Matt. Maybe they just don't care. Remember, they were the ones that got the tournament canceled last year because they were like, no, we're not playing with it. And then when everyone else was making money, they're like, yeah, we'll play football. Like, we got to get that football money. So I don't know if we're going to see other teams that have outbreaks. Like, but it's spring practice. I mean, you know the protocols. You've had a successful season. At some point, the teams that are going to be successful have to have their own thing. Like, you can't keep using it as an excuse if not everyone's going through the same issues. Right?
One would think.
Because, like, that's the Duke thing. They're like, oh, coronavirus is really hurting us. It's like, maybe poor coaching is hurting you guys. Maybe the game is past Coach K by. I mean, ever thought of that? So, I don't know, because it seems like a lot of the blue blood programs, ones that should be really hammering fundamentals, Matt, with young guys that are really talented coming in, they're the ones that are hurt the hardest by this. But some of them, Kansas, scandals, it's Kansas all the time. They don't really care. And they're going to be in the tournament. They're making a comeback. They're battling. But they have their own scandal coming, which is our last big topic for the week. I'll try to squeeze this in. So, Les Miles, basically, he got let go at Kansas, pushed out. I don't know what they talked about, it. He resigned or what. There was a scandal at LSU with him. One of the first podcasts I ever did before we started to do the Southbound Sports Show, we didn't have a name for it. So I kicked around, and Les Miles had this is like 2016. I said, you know what? Let's just do a sports podcast. Let me test it out, and then I'll let you guys know. We launched in January, I think it was like January 1st of 2017. But that fall, I recorded one on Les Miles getting fired from LSU. And I said, like, why? It just didn't pass the smell test for me. Because he was coming off a national championship win and an appearance. He started the season 2-2. His worst season was 8-5. They were still recruiting at the top of the sport. It just didn't make any sense. And there have been a couple other firings we talked about on the show. Maybe something's come out. I think Chris Peterson stepping down at Washington, I thought was a shock to me. It's like, why? Why are you stepping down? Are there other things that are being hidden? But it turns out Les Miles had allegations against him. The athletic director wanted to fire him. The emails came out where he said, we have enough to fire him for cause. And the board voted against it. And then they said in the documents that they would be able to keep this out of the news, which they did until Coach O had all those other allegations. So you have back-to-back coaches, because remember, Les Miles was fired. And then there was the one big thing where, and this ties into Florida State, so I don't know if you saw this, Matt. The year they wanted to fire him, they were going to hire Jimbo Fisher.
Uh-huh.
But because the board voted against firing Les Miles, they withdrew the offer to Jimbo Fisher. I don't know if it was an official offer or what, but right after that happened, if you look at the dates in the email, I think someone lined it up. The next day, Jimbo Fisher said he was staying at Florida State.
Yep.
So like he was gone, because remember that was one of the things where everyone was like, "Oh, Jimbo, he's just using it to get a raise." Like, no, he was gone. LSU was going to hire him, but for whatever reason, the board decided like, no, we're going to vote and we're going to keep Les Miles. So shocking, right?
When you looked at that situation with Jimbo Fisher, that was almost the beginning of the end for him leaving, because shortly after, it was like within the next year, he had the offer at A&M and was out. So you kind of saw where the rifts were happening.
And it was almost like LSU, they missed on him. I know they won the national championship with Coach O, but because of the way it happened, remember, Coach O was the interim. They ended up just hiring him because they weren't getting any big name coaches. Like, Coach O was not a good hire. Like that, in hindsight, you're like, oh, that worked out perfectly for them. But now looking back on it, I mean, it definitely wasn't a good hire at the time. He didn't have a winning record. It was almost like Maryland getting Mike Locksley. It's like, okay, you got this guy. You're talking about how he's going to turn everything around, but look at his record. At some point, the record is the coach. Like, you can't keep giving the guy the benefit of the doubt. But now it's like, okay, now it's very clear that boosters were paying for people at LSU. In basketball, most likely football, the boosters were definitely covering up scandals. I mean, I don't see how Coach O's not fired. Like, he should be gone. It's shocking to me that Kansas is like, yeah, you're out. We're going to probably clean house, because we had our own paying scandal too for basketball. But it's like, all right, what are we looking at here? And then there are people that are shaming Michigan for trying to hang the Fab Five banners. It's like, just hang them. Like, who cares about the guys taking money when it's very clear that there's money changing hands, and the NCAA knows about it, and they've done nothing. How many years has that scandal been out, Matt, for basketball? 3 years now? 2 years?
Yeah, it's been out a while.
Nothing's happened. And so now you have a Georgia guy going rogue, where he announced that everyone knows that Georgia and Alabama are paying recruits from anywhere from like $75,000, $80,000 to $150,000 to sign with Alabama and Georgia. And he said, and I quote, "Where do you think Kirby Smart learned it?" Basically pointing the finger at Nick Saban. They said that Nick Saban at Alabama is using Bear Bryant Jr. He's like the head of their boosters organization that's paying players. That's the latest allegations. Now, because they named Nick Chubb came out and said that he wasn't taking money, which I mean, why not believe him? Because I think that that's a really weird recruit to throw out there. Maybe he took money at the beginning, but like to come back to college facing injury, like, I don't know, you can make more money in the NFL, like especially at that position in the running back. So I think his defense of saying, like, if I wanted to make money, I would have just went to the NFL. But again, you never know. Some of these players are also, or programs are also paying family members that are there, brothers, uncles. So at this point, like I said, just pay everybody. Just pay them. Let the recruits make money. Because if everyone knows that it's happening and then they're illegally allowed to do it, like, let them claim taxes. That's why it's almost like an Al Capone situation where the FBI is going to get involved and possibly the IRS, because if these guys are getting 100K bags dropped, that's basically a tax audit waiting to happen. I mean, but maybe they're so bold, Matt, that they're paying taxes on it.
I highly doubt that.
Well, you never know, because some of the ones, like some of the rumors for some schools, I'm not going to name names, but their rumors are that they're making the donations nonprofit based to churches that family members own, Matt, which would get around the tax loop. So basically, they're declaring that that they're dropping the bag, but because it's hidden behind an uncle's church or a brother's church or whatever, they're still getting the money to the family. But you have that whole thing. I mean, How many other programs down there? Was it Ole Miss where they had the recruit? Yeah, it was Tunzel, wasn't it? Was he at Ole Miss?
Yeah.
Where his text came out on draft night saying to like, hey, we need that money to pay for our electric bill. It's like, that's a very odd text to text your coach. Like, yo, they turn our lights off. We better get that money soon. And it's like, what does that mean? Like, everyone knows what it means. Like, come on. So, what do you think of that thing? Do you think, I mean, LSU and Les Miles, going back, the original message board rumor, like one of the original ones, back before most people even knew that you could go online and talk sports, was that Les Miles was involved in an incident in Michigan and they would never hire him. And so then you saw it play out. Like, I'm talking from the 90s. And if you want to look it up, look up like Les Miles and the Excalibur incident, and you'll see what I'm talking about. Because Michigan had a coach that was fired in the 90s before Lloyd Carr took over. So Les Miles was supposedly blackballed after that incident, and then everyone denied it. People around the Michigan program denied it. And then you have the Rich Rod hiring after Kirk Herbstreit comes on and says that Michigan's going to hire Les Miles. That deal falls through. Whichever side you want to believe, whether like LSU or Les didn't do it. These new documents from LSU said that once Les Miles won that national championship that year, that he made like very specific requests for blonde women. Matt, his wife's not even blonde. She's a brunette. So like he only wanted blonde girls around the program.
Well, there you go. He already had a brunette. He wanted one of each.
So
I guess like a Madden starter pack.
So he's like, yeah, this is what I need. And they said that he got like even more bold after that. Like, you know what?
He was playing Pokemon. He was trying to collect them all.
Not collect them all. He's trying to get that very specific one. That very rare one. He's like, I need blonde ones. That's what I like. Keep them around. So, I mean, you can look up and read all the allegations. I'm not going to read them on the show because I think that's boring. But I don't know. Maybe it's true. Maybe that's why Les Miles wasn't looked at for Brady Hoke whenever they hired Brady Hoke, because that was like the two finalists were Les Miles and Brady Hoke at Michigan. And then everyone said like, oh, Brady Hoke checked all the boxes. It's like, he didn't win a national championship. You, as the athletic director, you can't line up and say Les Miles and Brady Hoke. Brady Hoke's the clear winner at that point because that was a lie. So maybe there's more. Maybe people knew, which is just a thing where it's like, all right, how many people know? And like, why are you covering this up? Like, that's what I just hate. Like, in the age of like the one thing that people hate about like the internet where everything gets out, it's almost better. Because like, why do you have all these weird skeletons in your closet? Like, who cares? Like, what if you're doing something skeevy and you're a public figure like that, it deserves to be out. So that everyone knows what you're up to. And then they can fire you or whatever they need to do. So that's my last thought on it. Do you have anything else you want to talk about?
No.
I mean, it's crazy. We're right now where it's at, where teams are getting ready for their coming football season. And you're having all these allegations and recruiting stuff drop right when teams are starting to get their initial commits for next year's recruiting class. Will anything happen? Doubtful. Will LSU go down? Because my final thought, and this will be my final bet, because we could talk some basketball or whatever, but we're already over time, so we'll save it. The situation at Penn State was one football coach that was removed from the program, and in the internet age, like that never would have happened. Like Joe Paterno's like, I don't know how to read emails or whatever he was saying. Like, that would never happen in today's day and age. Could you imagine if a coach is like, emails? I don't know about this proof that you have this coach doing crimes on campus. Like most people, I think, and I hope that the athletes and whatever could come out there, but Penn State has to be pissed because what LSU did was 100 times worse. You have coaches being a predator on campus. They know about it. The guy, athletic director, tries to fire him, and then they still are like, no, we got to keep him. Like, he's like, hey, we have cause here. Like, let's cover this up. And they're like, no, we shouldn't cover this up. And everyone's also like, yeah, we're covering it up. Like, like to me, I don't understand how LSU doesn't get the death penalty. They should do whatever they did to Penn State and multiply it by 2 at least.
Wow.
Matt, it's going on in multiple sports a decade. This isn't like, I mean, the argument against Jerry Sandusky was that it wasn't football related. This one is 100% football related. Les Miles is telling the admin that he needs blondes to help him recruit. Like, that's basically what he's saying. And so I don't even know how the NCAA doesn't look at this and say, oh, yeah, Penn State was definitely death penalty worthy, but LSU, like, no. Like, these are actual athletes here, Matt. Like, they're covering up sexual assaults from players, coaches, for a decade. And you're telling me that the Penn State situation was worse in terms of athletics? Like, you can't say yeah.
The only reason that I would even consider a yes there is if you're dealing with, like, a lot of the allegations at Penn State were with minor athletes, like camp kids.
Yeah, but again, they gave them an athletic death penalty. Like, and there are still admins that were involved in that haven't been charged with crimes, Matt. I was all for getting people arrested and having them charged for crimes, especially if they knew. Like, that's a criminal offense to me. But, like, shutting down the football team, it seemed like a weird response when it wasn't like athletes or like whatever. It wasn't like a rogue employee. Like, he wasn't employed anymore. So, okay, yeah, you're going to penalize them a little bit, but you're hurting people that are on scholarships. Like, LSU is directly related to football recruiting, athletes getting away with stuff. They're covering up for it, paying basketball players. Like, how many more things do you need from one school before you say, oh, yeah, death penalty? Like, if the Penn State one scared them, death penalty didn't even hurt Penn State. Like, they dropped off, like, barely because of Bill O'Brien. Like, he came in and saved them.
Yeah.
So, I mean, you can't tell me, like, oh, no, not a big deal. It's like, well, then, who's not a big deal? The girls that the coach is hitting on, taking them in their car to his unnamed condo? Like, what are you talking about? He's their superior, and they knew. Like, the Sandusky one, it was like Penn State, like, the admin, they didn't even really believe it. Because people, like, these are adults that are saying, like, yeah, this happened, here's all our statements. And then they're like, we see the evidence, but we're going to have to just ignore this. Like, it's unreal. I can't make it up. And it's still going on. Like, that's why I'm surprised that, like, LSU and Coach O, like, you would immediately think he's fired. You would immediately think Wade is fired at LSU, the coach that had, like, the tapes out.
Yeah.
Like, to me, that's like, okay, you're just pushing the button of the LSU, or LSU's pushing the NCAA's button. Pushing it. Like, at some point, they just got to be like, all right, death penalty. Because it's like a kid. A kid keeps, like, slapping their mom. Eventually, the mom's going to slap the kid back or do something. Right?
Maybe.
I don't know. So, that's my last thing. I did have one other thing, though. Illinois wrote a letter to the Big Ten, Matt, for basketball. They wanted to claim a basketball championship after they didn't win
it. Then don't write a letter. Just claim it.
Which I want to say something because this is my last final bell for real. So Michigan won the Big Ten. I talked about it a few weeks ago how they weren't going to go by winning percentage. They were thinking of not going. They were going to go by wins and losses or whatever. So Michigan played 3 less games. They have 2 less wins, 1 less loss than Illinois. The winning percentage is like 825 to 800. So Michigan wins by like 225% or whatever. 200, whatever it is. I don't even know the math. But they win. They have the winning percentage, so they're the title champions. So Illinois decides, you know what? Nah, that's not gonna be right. We played more games than them, so we should claim the championship, right? But to me, Illinois already signed off in football by letting Ohio State claim it because Indiana played more games, had only one more loss than Ohio State, and they had more wins, right? So if that's your logic,
fair is fair.
Wouldn't Indiana be Big Ten champs? And then someone said, "Oh, that doesn't work in football because there are no co-champs anymore." Did Ohio State and Urban Meyer not have back-to-back Big Ten East champ shirts made the year Penn State was in the Big Ten championship? I think they did. Does Jim Harbaugh not have a trophy for his Big Ten East championship? Co-champion? I think he does. So if Urban Meyer and Jim Harbaugh both have co-champ trophies, Matt, doesn't a co-champ exist in football? So why isn't Indiana co-Big Ten champs? That's my last thing. If Illinois gets named co-Big Ten champs, which is ridiculous, then shouldn't Indiana be co-Big Ten champs?
Claim it.
Claim it. That's my thing. Claim all championships you can do, and if people are going to laugh at them, like because the Big Ten has to give them the trophy. Like Urban Meyer got his co-Big Ten champs trophy. I mean, Harbaugh built a whole trophy case for his at Michigan, which is kind of embarrassing.
For that one.
For that one. And it was just co. They didn't make the championship game. So for this, I mean, Michigan gets the 1 seed in the tournament. To me, if Illinois wants to win a trophy, just win the tournament. Like, you have your chance. Indiana didn't get that chance. So for them, they should get to claim it. Because why not?
Yes.
Illinois, you're going to claim it. This looks ridiculous on you. Like, I know you beat Michigan last week, but maybe you shouldn't have lost to Maryland or whatever other teams you lost to, Rutgers. Like, what are you doing? It's like, all right, yeah, you only played Michigan once. It was an unbalanced schedule. Michigan, 3 of the games they postponed. One was Northwestern, which they didn't play. The other 2 postponements were Penn State and Indiana, and they beat both teams the other time they played them. So they would have to go 2-1 against those 3 teams. It's not like they missed out on playing Illinois again, maybe Ohio State or Iowa, like some of the top 10 teams in the conference. Like they missed out on playing some of the weaker opponents. All the top teams they rescheduled and still finished with the better winning percentage. So, I don't know what Illinois' beef is, but now their coach has to have a target on him going into the Big Ten tournament, I would think. Because how many other teams are like, all right, are you serious? So that's it. You got anything else?
Check out southboundsports.com. Go to our store, and maybe we'll put up the Claim It t-shirt, and you can get that. You can probably just say, my team won a national championship because we claimed it.
That should be it. I did see someone that so I don't know if it was a fan. I can't remember. Someone told us that we should print up t-shirts because apparently you can print up shirts with like the championship numbers on it. But then because they're ones that they're not claiming, you might be able to get around the copyright. Because like Michigan can print out, like they have their football one where it has like 11 champs. But if I printed one up that just had a generic Michigan on it and then a bunch of years that they weren't claiming, could you be sued? Because like what would the team say? Like, oh, how is that tied to you? You guys don't claim that 1939 national championship. And then I thought that could bring good publicity to the show, but then we'd also have to battle a lawsuit against one of these big schools, Matt. Because like UCF, I mean, if we made a UCF one that said Central Florida on it, and then the year 2017, like people would know exactly what we're talking about. Champions. But if I made my Pittsburgh champions and then just throw all theirs, I think they claim all theirs though. So we need a school that doesn't claim championships. Because like Pitt and Alabama, they're claiming everyone they can, baby. Got to put that up 9 champs on the Heinz Field.
And there is a lot of champs.
Yeah, so maybe you're onto something. We'll look into that. But if you have any ideas, let me know. If your school also needs to claim some champs, let me know. I'll find some for you. That could be like our segment. I'll pick up each school that they don't think they're winners because their school's mostly known for losing. I'll find you a few championships. Don't worry.
We'll make you full 5-star hearts.
Yeah, 5-star hearts. That's my new thing. 5-star hearts. Because you never know. Tom Brady, 5-star heart. He went in. Everyone laughed at him this year, said he was old. And then he just willed himself to their championships. So you have to have that positive outlook. Otherwise, you're just going to be a loser. So claim the championships, have the 5-star heart, and be proud of it. So thanks for listening, and we'll see you next week.